bred by the Scott brothers.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
We would like to thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park's championship meet runs now through March 30th with high-quality action throughout, including the Florida Derby on Saturday, March 29th. Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this fun Saturday morning. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Let me start things out. There are a couple of carryovers today worth noting. At Aqueduct, Pick 6 has $14,000 up for grabs. Starting in race number 5 at about 320. But more importantly, maybe, because I know people love these Pick 5 carryovers. Tampa, Pick 5 carryover, late Pick 5, $51,000. They'll send it in. That'll balloon up. That starts race 5 down at Tampa today at about 2:35. So keep that in mind for a little bit later on today. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by Joe Kristufek. Again, it is a big day of racing down at the Fair Groounds. So Joe, the paddock commentator down there, will get some of his thoughts on the stakes down in New Orleans. But it's also a big stakes day at Turfway as well with the Jeff Ruby. Both of them big 3-year-old stakes and a really nice undercard of stakes as well at the two venues. But as I say, a couple of 3-year-old stakes. So it was about time. We haven't talked in a few weeks, but Countdown to the Crown, horseplayernow.com, Jermey Plonk, 3-year-old season. I always like to plug them in a few times. And given the two big 3-year-old races coming up later today, I thought we'd get thoughts on that and more from Jermey. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Seth. Good to be with you. We're getting close now, right? I mean, This is the last call for the prep races. The last round begins with 100-point preps, and 2 horses in each race today will have enough points to be in the Kentucky Derby, maybe third, depending on how the previous points work out and things shake out. So who knows? After today, we might have 20% of the Derby field determined.
And I mentioned your Countdown to the Crown. I have it fired up on my computer. It comes out every Friday throughout the Triple Crown season, starting back in January, and through much of it, you're focusing on 3-year-old races that will have potentially, some import into the Triple Crown season. It's mainly stakes now, again, because we're getting to that last round of points races. And, you have your top 20, you have the 3 things you won't read anywhere else. And I was also intrigued. Countdown to the Crown has been around long enough now that you're looking back. And you look back to the 2017 season, this was it was an interesting fact. Always Dreaming gets the Kentucky Derby, subsequently Cloud Computing, Preakness, Tapwrit, the Belmont. And I know Derby winners, it's been kind of a thing. They haven't maybe been productive after the Derby in recent years, going back a little bit. But you mentioned Always Dreaming 0 for 5, Cloud Computing 0 for 4, Tapwrit 0 for 5 after the Triple Crown season win. But they all came back in the Travers. I'd forgotten all about this. They all came back in the Travers and finished out of the money behind West Coast. I thought that was an interesting look back.
Yeah, it's our 20th season. So what I'm doing is each week of the scouting report, looking at one of the 20 seasons, and we're up to week 12, which got us to 2017 last week. And that wasn't the most impressive of the groups that we've had, for sure.
That was very interesting. And again, going back to my days, there was another, and I can't remember now. It was owned by the Canadian. There was one years ago where the 3 Triple Crown winners came back, and they were upset. And I should remember the name because I remember I had the winner. Took a shot against the Triple Crown. But this is going back a way. This is when I first got in the game. But you don't see that too often. You don't see too often three separate Triple Crown winners come back in the Travers. It's always fun, though.
I want to say it was the year with Timely Writer winning Travers.
No. Runaway Groom.
Runaway
now
Groom.
The call is in my head. Yeah, there you go. All right. Just before we go, we mentioned Countdown to the Crown. People should check that out. Again, every Friday, lots of good information there. But just before we get into it, mention your Substack as well. And folks can also find you. A lot of times when I'm handicapping at night, I pull up the podcast on YouTube as well. So talk a little bit about those.
With Countdown to the Crown? Or, I'm sorry.
Just talk a little bit about your Substack. And on YouTube, the podcast, people can check those out.
Yeah, on Substack, we send out the weekly information. You can get Countdown to the Crown sent that way. Also, some handicapping information for other tracks. And basically, all that we're doing, it's free to subscribe. Jermey.Plonk at Substack. So you can go to Substack.com and check that out. Free service sent out into your email inbox. So I know people don't surf the web like they used to as much. They want stuff where they are. So we're going to continue to send that out each and every week. Again, free to use the Substack. And then, of course, the podcast, I do 2 of them each week with Express Bets. We do the First Call podcast on Fridays, which is a handicapping podcast of 8 stakes races on the weekend. The last few weeks have been joined by Scott Shapiro on that. My partner, Jeff Siegel, sidelined for a little bit. So we're hoping to have him back in good health here soon. So Siegel and I also do a Tuesday podcast called It's Official, which is a weekend recap of what happens in racing and kind of hot topics and things like that. So been flying that solo for the last few weeks, but you should get a guest handicapper for the Friday show. And Remington's back. I'm doing podcasts for them for their quarter horse meeting now. And we'll also be doing podcasts hopefully for Keeneland as we get set for that meet coming up in a couple of weeks. So a very busy time of year. Yeah,
Keeneland certainly will check in because you handicap the Keeneland card every day. People can find the picks on the website, so we'll check in on that as well as we approach the Derby also. But again, we wanted to talk a little 3-year-old action vis-a-vis Countdown to the Crown. And before we get to the 2 races today, we haven't talked in a few weeks, so I wanted to go back the last couple of weeks. And 2 weeks ago, Tampa Bay Derby. We're going to watch the replay here. It's going to be number 1, Owen Almighty, getting it done. On your top 20, he's sitting at number 14. Chancellor McPatrick, the number 2, winds up second in his seasonal debut. You have him sitting at number 17. Disappointment was Patch Adams, the number 7 is the favorite, runs 4th in here. Buyer figure coming out was a 92 for Owen Almighty. And I don't know what to make of this because the trainer comes out and says, before the race says, I'm going to the Pate Mile. And after the race, the trainer still says, I'm going to the Pate Mile. But they interviewed part of the ownership group right after the race, and they're kind of like, well, we have enough points to get to the Derby now. And it seems like they're looking at the Derby. So I don't know what to make of the results of the Tampa Bay Derby, particularly the winner, Owen Almighty, because when there's a rift like that, I'm always a little curious. And I'm not sure what to make of Chancellor McPatrick, who I like quite a bit. And I guess that was a pretty good seasonal debut. I want to see what he does next out because obviously there's another start planned before or if they go to the Derby. But what was your takeaway from Tampa?
I think the one point people are missing with the Owen Almighty story is that they're not training up to the Kentucky Derby. So it's not like Derby fever. We've got the points, so we belong and we want the seats, and so we're just going to run this horse. They're going to run him back at Keeneland in the 1 1/8 Bluegrass to see if he fits. And so if he handles the 1 1/8, then he's going to belong in the Kentucky Derby as well as any horse who's ever been in the Kentucky Derby, right? I mean, you run 1, 2, 3 in the Bluegrass, you belong in the Kentucky Derby. I mean, that's just kind of the way that it has been. And so when you look at this Tampa Bay Derby victory, maybe they thought he was a miler going into it. But he ran the 4th quarter in this race in 23-4 and came home in 5-4, the final 16. He was a full 16/100ths below 6 seconds for the final 16th of a mile. This was exceptional late. As good of a 1/16 over the final last quarter and last 16th of a mile as I've had in the 20 years doing this series. Nobody puts up splits like that on the back end of these races. It is exceptionally good. Now, he had an easy pace to do it. We could talk about Jose helping the ride on the clubhouse turn to get Irad an easy lead onto the backstretch. But this horse finished, and there was a really good horse behind him, 2 good horses behind him for Chad Brown, who lost ground over the last half mile of the race. The closers didn't close. They actually got farther away while passing horses to the winner. So Owen Almighty was really, really good in this race. So I don't understand the weird. I get it because, Brian Lynch came out and said, oh, he's a miler. But horses fool trainers all the time.
Yeah.
And so this one, it's no different than, we'll talk about the Virginia Derby in a minute. Nobody thought the Lucas horse was a Derby horse until he ran that performance, and now maybe he's one. So these horses fool trainers all the time, much less this time of year with 3-year-olds who are blossoming. Look, Owen Almighty ran a bang-up second to John Hancock at Sam F. Davis. That was a stakes record time, the fastest Sam F. Davis ever run. This was the second fastest Tampa Bay Derby run. So he ran faster than Taprit did, who won the Belmont. He ran faster than Street Sense did, who won a Derby. Only Tacitus ran a faster Tampa Bay Derby, and this was he went slow early. Well, if you go slow early, you usually don't run the second fastest final time in the history of the race. Then it's usually a slow race. So there's a reason to bring this horse to the mile and 1/8 Bluegrass and see if he can get a little farther. And if he can, and if he can run top 3 in the Bluegrass after winning the Tampa Bay Derby, he's got as good a Derby resume as any horse in any given year. I mean, doesn't mean he's one of the favorites to win the Derby, because it's tough to win the Derby wire to wire unless you've got one of these Baffert horses that were just head and shoulders better than everybody in some years. But he belongs as much as most horses in this crop right now. So I like him. I think he's a really nice horse. I don't know if he's a 1.25 mile horse. That's the case with a lot of them. It looks like Chancellor McPatrick's probably like a 1.16 mile kind of horse. I don't think he's going to get better the farther they go. I thought he was decent in this spot. Hill Road, the 3rd place finisher, is probably a better prospect going to the 1.8 mile and the 1.25 mile next. Chancellor McPatrick might be a more brilliant horse and a better racehorse, but for a 1.25 mile, maybe Hill Road's the best one out of there for Chad.
And Owen Almighty with the 92 Beyer. That was a nice step forward. Beyer-wise, his top before that was 87. So you want to see that as well. And as you say, the closing fractions and take the shot. I get it. I mean, you get one shot at the Derby, and if you have a horse who is going well at this time of year, I get taking the shot completely.
Yeah, and one thing about that Sam F. Davis Beyer was really low, right? They were like in the 80s, even though it was the fastest one ever run. And part of that was because the Suncoast Stakes was on the undercard, and the filly who won the Suncoast Stakes, her name escapes me, but she had never gotten out of the 50s, low 60s hardly, and then she ran really fast time. So I think the Beyer guys trying to make figures for that day were kind of in a quandary. They were going to have to move all these horses up in the Suncoast Stakes 30, 40 points from their best if the numbers were going to match up. And I think it was kind of a tough day to make figures for them. And I think they severely underscored that figure in the Suncoast. And that's why people went in with Owen Almighty. Said, well, he hasn't run that fast, and this 92 is a nice move forward. I'm not so sure he didn't run that fast in the last race either.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Also wanted to talk a little bit about the aforementioned going back last week, Virginia Derby. We're going to watch the stretch run here. It is going to be number 3, American Promise, getting it done. In this day and age, he came in with some nice experience. 8 starts. He had run 5th in the Risen Star, and he had run 6th in the Southwest at Fair Groounds in Oaklawn in his previous 2 starts. Hence goes off at 7-1. But again, we're going to see here, wins off by almost 8 lengths. Nice performance here, and adds a great storyline to the Triple Crown Series this year with 89-year-old Dwayne Lucas again, perhaps headed to the Derby, certainly points-wise. But he's now talking about maybe another start for American Promise, which would be interesting. What were your thoughts coming out of last weekend's stake?
Yeah, look, the Baffert horse took a big step back, right? Getaway car. He wheeled back a little bit fast in this day and age, 27 days rest. He was coming off a 3-month layoff and ran a really hard race in the Sunland Derby where he went nose-to-nose the entire way with Caldera. He came back on 27 days rest, and he got out of the gate fast and just ran out of starch, So it was a disappointing race from Getaway Car, but beyond him, there was really nobody with any resume in this race. Whoever won this race, this was going to be their career-defining race. other than Getaway Car, who had some credentials about him as a 2-year-old. So, I don't know what he beat in here. Yes, he ran a fast time. 46-2 is really fast for a 1.1 miles. Remember, it's a 1-turn 1.1 miles, so that's faster than they're going to run in a 2-turn race for sure. The question here with me is, and I look back in the database, I think they had run 3 1.1 miles races on dirt at Colonial Downs in the last 12 years that I could find in the BetMix database. So, you can't make a lot about that being a track record, but it was a fast time. But it didn't come home fast. Over 38 seconds for the last 3 furlongs. Usually 38 seconds is the cutoff I'm looking at for horses in the final line of prep races, whether or not I want them moving forward to the 1.25 miles. This is a 1-turn race, and he hit 38, which was right on the brink, right? You want a horse really shading 38 if you can, 38 max. You should run a little bit faster in a 1-turn race late than in the 2-turn races. So I don't think he came home all that fast. I'm suspect about him. Remember, he's already had a couple shots. Southwest, he got beat handily in there to Speed King. He got beat handily in the Risen Star, beaten a dozen lengths or so, 13, I believe it was, at Fair Groounds. So he didn't match up with the horses in the Southwest or the Risen Star. I think he caught the right field. He ran absolutely the best race of his career. He's coming along at the right time. Is he another charismatic for Lucas, who kind of came out of the woodwork back in 1999? I guess we'll find out. He's going to get, like he said, maybe another shot in the Bluegrass. You'll know what you need to know about him if he runs back one more time, right? If he's moving forward, you'll see it in the Bluegrass. If this was just a weak bunch that he beat, you'll also see that in the Bluegrass.
One way or the other, fun to have Lucas flirting around again.
For sure.
Years old. You have American Promise at number 19 on your top 20. You sound a little bit skeptical, but as you said in previous years, he's likely in on points. So when you get to this situation, he's got to get into the top 20 because he's likely there.
Right, exactly. Once they get up over 50 points like this time of year, okay, if they want to run, they're in. So I kind of slot him in towards the bottom. But yeah, he would not be a horse for me in the Kentucky Derby unless he runs another big race, right? If he runs another big race, then this horse is really blossoming. Look, he's not like some cheap runner, right? It took him a while to get going, but he's a $750,000 from the Justify, right? He was meant to be pretty good. It took him 7 tries though to break his maiden, and 6 tries, I should say. And he's sitting here now, lifetime at 2 for 9. So he's not one of the ones, but if he runs another big race, he could certainly start to be talked about.
95 buyer for him. And I just wanted to mention also, we mentioned American Promise down at 19, but number 1 and 2, I think, on your list are probably right up there. Certainly number 1 for a lot of folks, Journalism. And we mentioned some of the buyers, but Journalism with his 108 in the San Felipe, again, I think is at the top of many lists.
Yeah, look, many years it doesn't work out this way, but I'll pat myself on the back a little bit. Journalism was the preseason number 1 in the first week of January, and he's lived up to it. So I don't always get that right, obviously, but I felt that his race in the Los Alpicurity was better. What I've seen in the 2 route races he ran at 2 than what was coming out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and that's why he ended up there to start the season. But he's much better now than he was then, too. He's going to be tough. But the Santa Anita Derby could come up strong with several Bafferts that are potential to run in there. So he's got to prove, he's got to keep doing it, and he's got to keep improving. But right now, he's run the best race of the year so far, that win in San Felipe.
And you have Sovereignty at number 2. I thought he looked good in the Fountain of Youth. And River Thames. In the future pool the other day, River Thames was a pretty good price. I think he's interesting also.
Yeah, he is. And, where he ends up, I'm kind of thinking he might be a horse for the Bluegrass. I believe he's owned China Horse Club and Windstar Farm, and they took John Hancock to Louisiana this weekend, which I always thought John Hancock or Brad Cox looked like a Bluegrass horse, and they never really said we're going to the Bluegrass with him. They've looked other places. So I'm thinking, who do they have for the Bluegrass then, if not that horse? And I think River Thames might be the one that fits that bill, because Pletcher's got to separate his runners a little bit. He's got Grande, I believe, going to Aqueduct for the Wood, and then he's going to stay there in Florida with Disruptor, the horse who was really impressive on the undercard of Fountain of Youth Day. He's going to be Pletcher's horse for the Florida Derby. So, I think we will end up, I think we'll end up seeing the other horse that we're talking about perhaps in the bluegrass there for Pletcher.
And just a couple others I wanted to talk about because they may float. Well, one of them might float under the radar. Cornucopian, I don't know so much, float under the radar because we'll watch a workout going back, I believe it was Monday maybe, and it's dark essentially. Yeah. And it's Barnes and Cornucopian. Cornucopian is on the inside here. So, again, it's a little tough to see, but it was a workout. And it seems like Cornucopian, who got a career debut relatively late, the 23rd of February, but won down at Oaklawn, Baffert decides, hey, I'm going to send to Oaklawn a 101 buyer in the career debut. And, it's a late start, but if they head to the Kentucky Derby, Cornucopian could be intriguing.
Yeah, he was the beer money horse there on Rebel Stakes Day when Baffert sent one to run in the Rebel, and he was on the undercard or Southwest Day, Rebel or Southwest Day. I can't remember which one it was. But, he ran off, and they say that the track officials say that was the fastest a 3-year-old race ever run at 6 furlongs at Oaklawn. So 109 and change. It's absolutely amazing. Look, he's late in the game, but like Taba won the Santa Anita Derby in his second career start off, 1 6-furlong maiden win for these same connections just a couple of years ago, right? So it's not unprecedented for Baffert to have a horse get this good that fast. So Cornucopian is a really interesting runner, and I think this workout's pretty telling because it is in the dark, and I don't think Baffert doesn't work a lot of them in the dark. First off. The old joke about Bob was he got there around the break, around 8 o'clock to the barn. So if he's working 2 Derby horses at 6 a.m. in the dark, I don't think he necessarily wanted the result of this workout. I think he knew what was going to happen. That Cornucopian was actually better than Barnes, and Barnes is a $3.5 million horse and whatever. And from the little that you can see in the dark in this workout and finishing up, the horse going a little bit easier and going better, and then certainly galloping out better here is Cornucopian. And I think this was a way of showing that he was the better of the 2 horses without necessarily taking anything away from or embarrassing the workmate in here, who's a horse who's worth a lot of money and who could very well win a Grade 1 race in this next. These both are Grade 1 caliber horses, right? So Baffert's not going to run these 2 against each other. I would be sure of that. But I think the result that happened in the morning was expected, and I think that's why it was in the dark.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch, as they say, with a very late start. You go back even 10 years ago, a February 23rd start would not have been a Derby horse, but it's a different day and age. It's going to be fun to watch that one. And I alluded to it when I said maybe one of these will float under the radar. You had a nice little note on your Countdown to the Crown page. 98-1 closing in last week's future pool, Luxor Cafe, a Japanese runner. And he'll have another race coming up on March 29th. Mm-hmm. But we're going to take a look at the Hyacinth here, which was back on February 23rd. Interesting also that this horse is ridden by Rachel King, female jockey based down in Australia, mm-hmm. but I believe she's a Brit, but she rides occasionally in Japan. She's been on board Luxor Cafe last couple of starts, so that adds a little intrigue to the story as well. But again, this is one that I could easily see floating under the radar, but could be an interesting entrant coming in from Japan possibly.
Yeah, the horse who comes on to run second in that video is really a talented horse, not Triple Crown nominated, but headed to the UAE Derby. So this was a good effort here in the Hyacinth Stakes. The Japanese, of course, just missed by 2 noses last year on the wire. If they send a horse over who's won 4 of 5, which if this horse wins the next prep, which you expect him to win in the Fakourou Stakes back on March 29th, as you mentioned, if he wins that race as expected, he's going to be 4 for 5 lifetime. He's by American Pharoah. He's a half to one of those Chad Brown fillies who won a couple million on the turf. Their name escapes me right now, but there's a lot of pedigree here. Like, this is an American pedigree. The horse has been running on the dirt in Japan. He's the best horse in Japan right now from the 3-year-olds coming over. And that alone, if you're the top horse from Japan after what we saw last year with Forever Young, that makes you like 10-1 in the Kentucky Derby, right? And so this horse is potentially a 10-1 shot in the Derby that you just got for 98-1. And you didn't get 98-1 like in January and have to worry about 10 things going right for you to get there for that kind of price. To be 1 prep away with a horse who's a really decent chance of being 10-1 in the Kentucky Derby. I thought that was one of the better value plays I've seen in the future wager in a while.
Yeah, you mentioned related to that Chad Brown runner. Also had a sibling, Cafe Pharaoh, that ran over in Japan, was a champion dirt horse over there. So there's some nice one that may be intriguing to watch, and keep your eyes overseas next week when that one gets the next race in Japan. All right, so there was going back a little bit, just catching up, but now let's take a look at some of the action today. The two nice 3-year-old races, Louisiana Derby at the Fairgrounds and the Jeff Ruby at Turfway, and we'll start Louisiana Derby. I pulled up a replay here of the horse I'm going a little bit off the radar, although I've heard people mention this horse this week, so I'm interested to see what happens. I went back to the Maiden Breaker for Hypnus. This is going to be back in middle of January. Hypnus is going to be the number 6 horse here. This was a pretty impressive debut effort from Kenny McPeak. Subsequently runs 7th in the Rebel with some traffic, but that's a big ask. Maiden to a grade 3, a grade 2 actually. I think he's interesting this afternoon, but you have John Hancock in here, scratched out of the Virginia Derby last week. Caldera, going to see how we validate that Sunland Derby after that performance by Getaway Car. I'm with you. I think Getaway Car may have been up against it a little bit pace-wise and timing-wise. So I think Caldera can run well. Built is interesting. How do you see things playing out in the Louisiana Derby?
Well, Hypnus is an interesting horse. We'll start with him because you said you like him. And I've got him picked second in here, and I almost took a shot with him on top. He's got a real chance to win this race. I think he's going to be flying at the end. When he won that maiden race back in the slop there, January 18th, that was on the undercard for the Lecomte. He went about 4 lengths faster than the winner of the Lecomte did that day. And remember, the Lecomte winner, Disco Time, is out and sidelined. We haven't seen him back since. Magnitude, the horse who won the Risen Star, second leg of the Louisiana Derby Series, is injured and off the trail. So the two big players so far this year at Fairgrounds are out. So you're looking for somebody either shipping in or somebody stepping up, potentially to kind of take the mantle for the tops here in the Louisiana Derby. I think Hypnus has a real chance in here. You know, really well bred into Mischief out of Dream Tree. I mean, he's got an exceptional pedigree. He's got a deep closing style, so the outside post probably not a hindrance. I think you're going to see Brian Hernandez drop back to last, go over to the fence, and try to save ground all the way. That's what he did in the Rebel Stakes. He was in that same kind of position. He wasn't last, but he was 9th of 13 in there, and he tried to save ground the whole way, as Hernandez is apt to do, and then rally up the rail. He got stymied, didn't really have anywhere to go inside, and so he didn't show a whole lot on the back end of the Rebel Stakes, but he did gallop out pretty well past the wire once getting into the clear. So I think Hypnus is a horse who's going to move forward. I think he's going to run a really good race. It might be good enough to win. But so many times we see on these big stakes days that the tracks play exceptionally fast. Speed wins all day. So it's hard to take a look past the speed horse if you like a speed horse on a big day like this. But there is plenty of pace in this Louisiana Derby. I like John Hancock. You know, I've talked about the Sam F. Davis, the fastest Davis run. I think that buyer figure is woefully undermarked at 84 for him on the win end. Owen Almighty's win since then, obviously, you know, Frank's the form. I think John Hancock's pretty darn good, and I think he's going to be tough. He's got the rail and he's got speed, but he's going to have some horses pressing him. Yinzer, the 4, can absolutely go early. Caldera won't be far off of it. Vassimo is very interesting, adding blinkers. Talk about him in a second for Todd Fletcher coming out of that Risen Star. So there's plenty of pace in here. So if you like a closer like Hypnus, can't really argue with that too much. Built the horse who's been in all this series, right? He ran in the Gun Runner and won that, but then he was second in the Lecomte, third in the Risen Star. He wasn't supposed to run in the Risen Star, and then Wayne Catalano changed his mind. They were going to train from the Lecomte up to the Louisiana Derby. I thought they crammed the start in there. Maybe they were going for the money, you know, a lot of purse money there, and they had a horse who was hot and don't leave him sit in the barn. But I think it was a bad move. He went backwards in that race, and now they had blinkers, which seems like another sort of desperate move to me. He didn't lose that race because he lost focus. I just don't think he was sharp that day at all. Magnitude and company kind of ran away from him there at the end, and Magnitude was running away from everybody. I don't know why you go back to the blinker or why you go to the blinkers in this particular spot. He could be more forward in the race, and I don't think that's going to help him. His best shot would be to try to come from off the pace like he did in the Lecomte. But Jose Ortiz is riding great, almost 30% wins, 29% wins at a meet like Fair Groounds. That's unreal. So they do get a top jock, obviously, to ride Built, and he could be tough in there coming out of the Risen Star. But the Risen Star horse that I think is more interesting is Vassimo. If you go back and watch the replay, and it doesn't show up in the running lines because at a mile and an eighth, they don't give the start call. They only give the call at the first quarter mile into the race. He broke fastest of all. He broke on top in that race. And Irad Ortiz took a hold of him because you remember he doesn't show up in the running lines, but East Avenue was in that race and was the big favorite, and he had a ton of speed. And East Avenue ended up stopping on a dime, but I don't think Irad wanted to go out there and get tangled with East Avenue. He took a hold of the horse and tried to stalk. He ended up running kind of a spotty race, dropped back, came again for fourth. Blinkers go on a horse like that, which is a perfect time to do so. And if you've watched the last, I think it's 4 weeks in a row now, Irad Ortiz has put his Derby prep mount on the lead. No matter what track he's been at, no matter where he's been, he has gunned straight to the front. He did it last week with Getaway Car down in Virginia. Irad's riding extremely aggressive in these Derby preps. He's trying to pop them. I wouldn't be surprised with blinkers on, and as well as Vassimo broke that last time, I wouldn't be surprised if he's on top in this race. And so that could add to the pace too. So I like John Hancock a lot, but there's a lot of pace. So if you take a closer in here, I couldn't really argue with you.
I really looked at Vassimo, and I'm going to be very interested to see what the odds finally shake out at 12-1 on the morning line. And off of that last effort, I could see that holding up. But bettors these days focus so much on the buyers. The buyer was all right in the Risen Star. And you got Irad Ortiz. Vassimo does intrigue me a little bit. And I'll tell you, I made a note. I circled the buyer on the Sam Davis with John Hancock. And if John Hancock wins and winds up with like a 98 buyer, I'm giving you credit next week. I'm giving you a thumbs up because that's intriguing, the buyer situation down at Tampa on Sam Davis Day. I think you're right. There are days where, for folks who aren't familiar, it's as much art as it is science sometimes making those figures. So that's going to be an intriguing little side story for me to kind of watch and see what John Hancock does there. Let's shift over to Turfway this afternoon and the Jeff Ruby Stakes stake. That's like the very one stakes. But I said it correctly. Jeff Ruby Stakes stake. It's race 12 on the card today. I pulled up a replay of the horse I see from the page you have on top. We're going to look at Poster winning the Remsen last year. Poster's going to be the number 3 horse here. Subsequently, in the seasonal debut, he came back and ran third in the aforementioned Sam Davis. And as I say, you have Poster on top. I'm taking a shot with Flying Mohawk in here. Coming in off a turf win down at the Fairgrounds, I thought that horse might be a little bit interesting at a price. I have Final Gambit in it. I have Baby Max. I will note you're coming in with a horse from the Sam Davis on the dirt. Previous years, I think you've liked turf runners coming up from Gulfstream, and we do have Charlize to Blame in here with that kind of an angle. So I found it interesting you switched up a little bit. But your thoughts on the Jeff Ruby?
Yeah, you're right, and I appreciate you remembering that over the years. Charlie to Blame is he looks to be a horse who kind of needs the front in here.
Yeah.
And because of Lucas's horse in here, Innovator, I don't think that turf speed is going to be effective, and that's why I went against Charlie to Blame in here. But my buddy Scott Shapiro in our podcast did take Charlie to Blame on top, so some respected handicappers do give him a chance in here. If Innovator doesn't like the synthetic and just never gets involved in the race, then obviously the pace situation might change up some. But Innovator's fast. I think he's going to go to the front in there. And so I would be surprised if another speed horse, California Burrito, the same way, the horse who wired the Battaglia, wired a mile synthetic race prior to that, he looks to me like he wants to be to the front too if he's going to run around 2 turns. And I don't think they're going to get there. I think Charlie's to Blame and California Burrito can't run with Innovator early. I think he's just too fast for him. So that kind of changes the situation and sets it up more for a closer. So Flying Mohawk, maybe from off the pace. Your horse last time rallied from 6-8 lengths back and won at Fairgrounds. I could see that. Whit Beckman got to the Derby last year for the first time. He's trying to get back there again. This is a good spot for a horse like this to take the shot. He's second off the layoff. It's a good form cycle. There's no reason why he can't be effective in here. If the race sets up for Poster and my pick, it's also going to set up for your pick of Flying Mohawk, and you're getting a much better price. I don't like the value standpoint. I think Poster will be underlaid in here. I don't think he's a great gamble. I just think he's the best horse of the group. But he has trained at Turfway all season. He has been there all winter. He only trained once down at Tampa before running in the Sam F. Davis. Owen Hardy kept him and Final Resort, the horse who won the Kentucky Jockey Club at Churchill. He kept them at Turfway all winter and trained them on the synthetic. Final Resort got hurt before running in the Battaglia and had to be sidelined. So maybe Poster wasn't meant to run in this race as the final race. It might have probably been Final Resort's race to run in. But after he got hurt, they just decided this is the easiest path to the Triple Crown for him. And coming off the race at Tampa, the timing worked really good for him. And he's trained there all season. So while he's not a synthetic horse, he has run twice on the turf, and he won both of those at Ellis and Keeneland last year. His dirt form's good. His turf form's good. And he's trained on the synthetic every day this winter. So I kind of figure if he can't handle it, then, then nobody will, just kind of on the ship. So I took Poster, but I'm not wildly, backing him at anything short of, $7, $8. I don't find that to be any great value.
It's an interesting race for sure. Again, it always is with some surface switches and who's going to take to it and who not. And Turfway this year has been a lot of fun for folks watching and playing, certainly. Jeremy, always appreciate the conversation. We're headed down to Florida next week to cover the Florida Derby down at Gulfstream. Also, other action next week. We have Florida Derby. And what is the other big 3-year-old stake next week? Arkansas Derby, right? The control room's telling me. Then the week after, we're at Bluegrass, Wood Memorial, Santa Anita Derby. Maybe we'll check in with you in a couple of weeks because it will be Bluegrass Day, and we can get kind of a final round look. But appreciated the thoughts today. Again, highly tell people checking out Countdown to the Crown and the podcast over on YouTube. But enjoyed the conversation, and we will talk again.
All right, and send along my good luck wishes to my pal Joe coming up next.
Absolutely, will do. Jermey Plonk, again, Countdown to the Crown, horseplayernow.com, and more. All right, we'll take a break, and when we come back, yes, it will be Joe Kristufek from Fair Groounds, paddock commentator down there. We'll talk about the Louisiana Derby and more. All of that right after this. Stay tuned.
Want to get your career in horse racing off to a fast start? Well, the University of Arizona's Racetrack Industry Program is your winning ticket. The Racetrack Industry Program has served as a springboard to some of the industry's most successful individuals, with a proven track record of job placement right out of college. If you want to earn a degree in the exciting horse racing industry, the Racetrack Industry Program can put you in the winner's circle.
Sometimes it pays to go with the flow, to check your worries at the door, to reconnect with your crew, to follow the thrills and the flavor, to roll with it and see where it takes you, to enjoy every minute to its fullest, and to dance like there's no tomorrow. You can do that here at Rivers Casino and Resort Schenectady, where the good times flow.
Day down at Fairgrounds on what's their closing weekend, traditionally Louisiana Derby Day, and a really great undercard of stakes that hit various divisions, the return of Sierra Leone and the New Orleans Classic. We'll hit on that and more. And as always, who better to talk to when we're talking Fairgrounds than our friend Joe Kristufek? You see him pregame, you see him paddock commentary. Joe, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Seth. Yeah, it's crazy. This meet absolutely flew by. It's closing weekend. We go out with a bang and, recharge the battery as much as I can and then head back to Louisville and get ready for Kentucky Derby 151.
Yeah, we were talking before we went on, and you were saying, you had a place down in New Orleans and you have some time left there and then a little vacation maybe and head up. So enjoy all of that. And, speaking of that, do you have to, right? Some favorite restaurants and whatnot down in New Orleans now?
Yeah, it's a balance every season because I think I've told you this before. I've got a list that I keep of everywhere that I've been, who I've been there with, because my memory, continues to fail me as I get older.
I hear you.
And I have a longer list of recommendations, places I haven't gone yet. So when you come back here, you're like, all right, I know which places I love. I want to make sure I go back, but I also have places that I want to try that I haven't tried before. So it's always a tricky balance. I live right on the edge of the French Quarter on a street called Barracks. It's basically Barracks and Charters, close to the Italian Barrel. And I can walk to so many great places. It's been my best season here from that regard. The weather's kind of been, up and down like it's been everywhere in the country. We had 10 inches of snow that one day. I mean, that was wild. We got whacked by the wind last Saturday, knocked power out. Right. We had to cancel the races and move them to Tuesday. And now, we've been blessed this week with beautiful weather. So hopefully it continues through Sunday, and at least I get a few nice days for my vacation time before I make that trek back to Kentucky.
Yeah, here in the Northeast, that snowstorm was kind of funny. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't funny to a lot of people down there, but one of the news stories said they had to borrow some snowplows from Arkansas because they didn't have any down there. So that was certainly up here. That was intriguing. And then Ken McPeak had some nice pictures out in the snow. So fun meet, obviously, and wrapping up. And so I pulled up last night some of the human side of things, and Jose Ortiz decides to spend the winter down in New Orleans. Good decision there on the jockey side. We're taping on Friday, so at the end of Thursday, Jose Ortiz 90 wins, Jareth Loveberry with 53, so a commanding lead for Jose Ortiz. Ben Curtis having a pretty good meet. He's sitting in third. Mitchell Morel fourth. Marcelino Pedrosa in fifth. Brian Hernandez down in the sixth position. And over on the trainer side of things, Joe Sharp has a 6-win lead over Brad Cox. So I suppose it's not absolutely sewn up, but he's in a pretty good spot. His wife, of course, the former jockey, Rosina Pravnik. I've seen her sit in with you a couple times during the meet, talk a little aftercare. Brad Cox is second. Joe Sharp with 35. Again, as we take this on Friday, Brad Cox with 29, Brett Calhoun and Shane Wilson, 24. Shane Wilson started off much more slowly than he did last year when he had that spectacular season, but he has inched his way up. Asmussen sits in the 5th place. And I will note, Cherie DeVoe's in 6th place, but 29% winners. She has much less number of starters than some of the others we've mentioned. So she's had a pretty good meet as well. But it's been fun on the human side of things.
It really has. I said earlier, this is one of my favorite years being here from a, location perspective. From top to bottom, I mean, the jockey colony adding Jose, it seems to have raised the level of everybody else out there. There's a lot of jockeys, throwing the stats aside, that have had very good meets. And you mentioned the trainers. Joe Sharp has run second, I think, 3 or 4 times, back in the, 2017, 18, like 5, 6 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. He ran second several times, and he was trying so hard to win it back then. And then he kind of just was resigned to the fact that he probably wasn't going to win a title here. And then this year I ran into him. I'm like, about a month ago, I'm like, Joe, you got a shot at this. He's like, well, I got a lot of horses that my owners are going to want to save for Keeneland, but it's those lower level horses, some of the claims, and some of the horses he's brought back off of layoffs that have gotten him over the hump. He's had a great meet, and I'm sure it's going to be a sweet title for him, given his history here in New Orleans and over many years past.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch the last few days for sure on those sides of things. And again, it's a big day on Saturday. You kind of alluded to it. What's the weather look like for Saturday?
Looks good. I mean, it
Nice.
looks really good. Looks good for Sunday too. And the rails are down on the turf as of Thursday, and it really didn't make a gigantic, inside the place to be kind of difference. in Thursday's races, but I think it's going to play pretty fairly even to out. If you're looking at the turf races at Fairgrounds, I would maybe give a little bit of an extra advantage to horses that have tactical speed and inside draws. I think it can only be beneficial to be down on the inside with the rails down.
Very good. Well, let's jump into it. We'll work our way backwards. The 12th race on Saturday. It is the Louisiana Derby Grade 2 event, $1 million up for grabs. And over the last few years, the very unique distance. I like this, 1 mile and 3/16. So you get a real feel for horses that may be capable at that 1.25 miles coming up in the Kentucky Derby. I pulled up a replay of the Sam Davis. We're going to watch John Hancock get it done over Owen Almighty. John Hancock will be the number 3 horse here. He'll clearly take a lot of action with the connections. Brad Cox, Flavian Prat on board. I'm going to take a pop with Hypnus. I think the Kenny McPeak runner just was fabulous in the debut effort. And then, they went into saltier company in the Grade 3 Rebel. I'm going to throw the dice a little bit there. Caldera comes in for Wayne Lucas, maybe gives him another runner in the Kentucky Derby. He's going to be a great story over the next few weeks. Built for the Catman, Wayne Catalano is interesting. How did you see the Louisiana Derby?
It's a 10-horse field, and is there any star power in here? We won't know really until after the race, but what a great bet. Do you think, John, I guess with Flavian Prat, I think John Hancock will be the favorite. Man, to me, pretty easy horse to oppose, honestly. I know he won the Sam Davis. I know he was game. I know he beat Owen Almighty, who came back and won the Tampa Bay Derby, but you got to go price shopping in here. There's other speed drawn to his outside. You got Yinzer. You got Furio for Joe Sharp, other horses that want to go forward. I'll start with Hypnus because I'm with you on him to a large extent. The Maiden Breaker was fantastic. The Rebel, he got stopped cold at the top of the stretch. Brian Hernandez Jr. basically had to, eat him at that point, and then he galloped out with the winner. So I thought it was a much better than it looks performance. When you mentioned the 1 mile and 3/16, Seth, I think that's going to be right up his alley. I think this is a true 1.25 mile horse. How good is he remains to be seen, but I don't think the distance is going to be the reason why he loses the race, which it could be for some of the others. I thought Vassimo ran a really, really sneaky race in the Risen Star. He was up close. He dropped back. He was wide. He came again late. Looked like a horse to me that was absolutely lost out there. And my comment in my formulator says spotty run blinkers ? And there you see it, the blinkers go on. So it just makes a ton of sense that this horse adds the blinkers. You get Irad Ortiz. Top Fletcher's won this race 5 times. I got a lot of respect for Mike Delaberto, but if this horse is half the 12-1 morning line, I think I would be okay with that. 5-1, I think I'd be fine with on Vassimo. Those are the two, and then maybe Caldera. He ran better than it looks in the Sunland Derby, although the winner Getaway Car was unimpressive to say the least in the Virginia Derby. That would be my other one. I'm going to be keying on those 3.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. As you say, given what Getaway Car did, I'm intrigued to see if Caldera kind of validates that the Sunland Derby wasn't much, or was Getaway Car just up against it the other day. I'm as I say, D. Wayne Lucas already adding some juice to the Kentucky Derby story, but we'll see what he does with Caldera on Saturday. The Fairground Oaks, again, on these big 3-year-old days for the boys, there's typically a 3-year-old filly race as well, and the Fairground Oaks fits that bill. Grade 2 event, 1 mile and 1/16, $400,000. I just couldn't get past Good Cheer. I'll pull up the replay here of the Rachel Alexandra. Good Cheer is going to be the number 2. I may play around a little bit with Goel's Delight. Ken McPeak had this one entered in the Virginia Oaks, but elected to take this spot coming up on Saturday. Now, well beaten in the replay we watched, but also very lightly raced. Ahava, the sibling to Vava, for the aforementioned Cherie DeVoe off a Maiden Breaker and debut is interesting. Her Laugh for Whit Beckman. Quick kick in here for Tommy Amos. In a filly division that is completely undefined, I think, at this point, other than perhaps Good Cheer, who really will stamp herself clearly as the top of the class with a win here. This is an interesting edition of the Fairground Oaks. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm still skeptical of how good Good Cheer really is. Okay. But again, the crop hasn't looked that good. So, she's supposed to win this race. Again, She's had a bad habit of breaking slowly from the gate. She broke a lot better last time out. It looks like they really taught her, even in a 4-horse field, sticking her behind horses and, showing her how to win, yet another way. She certainly has been able to overcome some of her misfortunes early in races and some trips to win, which is always a good sign. You look around at the rest of this field, Seth, from a heart perspective, I'd love to see the Louisiana bred Secret Faith run well, but she's going to be distance challenged to a large extent. You would think if she runs in this spot. Her laugh was great when she won the Untappable. It's funny, she won her maiden race off the pace after having some early trouble in that one, and then in the Suncoast she had a world of trouble at the start and still managed to get second. I do think that Whit Beckman likes Simply Joking quite a bit more. Horse that's going to run in the Fantasy at Oaklawn next week, I believe. But she's a contender on paper. And then Vava's little sister, Avava, she was so good on debut. She's stretching out for the first time. She doesn't have a lot of experience, but she should be forwardly placed. And she has a body type that leads me to believe that maybe she will be able to go on and go further distances than her very classy sister. So that's another one I'm intrigued to maybe use as a Vava. I'd like to see her run well. You mentioned how good of a meet Cherie DeVaux has had. That operation just does such a tremendous job in all categories, and looks like they've got another nice prospect in Vava's sister here.
Yeah, no question about it. And I took a close – I have her left down in the 4th spot. I took a close look at maybe putting her right underneath Good Cheer. I couldn't get past Good Cheer, but I'm intrigued to see what her left does on Saturday, certainly. All right, the 10th on Saturday is the Munoz Memorial, 1 1/8 on the turf, and – there is one in here from your partnership, Brilliant Racing, Johnny's Fireball, and I know typically you sit back and let somebody else do the handicapping action on those types of races, so I won't have you delve in. I will say, I pulled up a replay here of the Bryan Station at Keeneland in October. It's going to be Brilliant Birdie. It's another Cherie DeVaux runner making the 4-year-old debut. I just wanted to point that one out. I'm going to go with redistricting from Chad and Klarovich. Rebel Red's interesting. Again, Brilliant Birdie, I'm interested to see the seasonal debut. But you guys have Johnny's Fireball in here. Brilliant Racing, the partnership, and you're in with some other folks as well. Comes in off a 6th place finish in the Connolly over at Sam Houston behind Segoy and Verstappen, who I believe is in a race today, maybe a Turfway. But what was your takeaway from the Sam Houston race? You're coming in with a couple of nice workouts. Your takeaway from the Sam Houston race and your expectations on Saturday for Johnny's Fireball and the Munoz.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's Cherie against Chad here, right?
Yeah.
Firing some pretty live bullets at each other with the horses they've got entered. Cherie was quoted as saying that, this is just a starting point for Rebel Red and Brilliant Birdie. A great starting point it is with those horses on the grounds at Fair Grounds and how well they're doing. As far as Johnny goes, his best races have been 1 1/8. He was third last year in the Fairgrounds over a soft turf course. Going 1 1/8, he only got beat a half a length. He won the allowance race, the optional claiming 2 other than at Churchill 2 starts ago, going 9 furlongs. And last time out, he was just a little bit headstrong early, didn't have the cleanest of trips in the Connolly. What we like about him in this race is, A, he's on the grounds, and B, we'll get him back to Kentucky and run him at Keeneland, more likely Churchill, where we know he likes the turf and the competition. But we got an inside draw, which we didn't have last year when we were 8 wide on the first turn in this race. We got Florent Giroux, who's a good forward rider. There's not a lot of speed. We should get the trip we want. Whether or not we're good enough to hit the board remains to be seen. But Forth always trains like a monster, Seth, and he's about as honest as they come. And, we're playing with house money. So just looking forward to putting him in the gate and seeing what he can do on Saturday. We're confident he'll run his race. Yeah,
I'm certainly rooting for you. As I've said many times, your Brilliant Racing partnership has had some locals involved, and so it's been fun to root for your horses. Johnny's Fireball is clearly, if you're a partnership, this is the kind of horse you want to have. 27 starts, 7 wins, just under $500,000. Trained by Norm Cassie. I didn't mention Norm when we mentioned the trainers, because he's had a limited number of starters, but Norm's had a nice meet as well.
Yeah, he has, and he's got a horse. I know we're going to at least mention it in the Crescent City Derby, which I think has got a really, really good shot. Norm was a Louisiana bred, but it's a Gary Barber. So, when Gary Barber owns a Louisiana bred, chances are the horse is pretty good. We'll talk about that one. But, yeah, it'll be good to get back to Kentucky and, start to build the stable up again eventually. Right now we just got 3 horses set. We got Dual Guru running on Sunday in a 20,000 claimer. He's been a little bit of a disappointment, to say the least. And then we got Spider Woman coming back. She's been training like a monster. She's going to be back most likely at Keeneland. She just came back into Michelle Level at Churchill yesterday, in fact, and she's got a lot of potential. So you might be able to cash a ticket on Spider Woman. Watch for her name in the entries at Keeneland coming up in a few weeks. All
right. And I always like to tout if folks are interested in maybe exploring partnership, ownership. You guys have a really nice website, brillianthorseracing.com. They can check that out as well. All right. The New Orleans Classic, folks are clearly looking forward to this because Sierra Leone making the 4-year-old debut after a very, very nice 3-year-old season. And he has the chance, he will add his name one way or the other to the 4-year-olds this year that are making the older division very exciting after kind of a quiet handicap division last year. The 3-year-olds have from last year have stepped up early on. One of those is Hall of Fame, and I'm pulling up the Mineshaft here to take a look at the Mineshaft featured Hall of Fame as the winner, the number 4 horse. And I'm going to go in that direction at the horse to beat Sierra Leone. But I just thought maybe off the recency, if you're going to take a shot against Sierra Leone, today may be the day. San Siro to me is a little bit intriguing. Bishop's Bay on the outside for Brad Cox. But how did you see the Classic?
Yeah, I mean, common ownership on Hall of Fame and Sierra Leone. And it's interesting, Steve Asmussen's on the ground. He's been pointing to this race the entire year with Hall of Fame. And then here comes Chad Brown with, common ownership in Sierra Leone saying, we're going to make our 2025 debut in this race. And Steve said, I don't care. We're running. Like, we're here. And the connections are okay with it. In a perfect world, Hall of Fame wins the race and Sierra Leone makes a huge run and falls just short. You get the grade 2 on the resume of Hall of Fame, and you get a great starting point for Sierra Leone, which Chad Brown has said, this is a starting point. I mean, this is, March in a season where they want to get to the Breeders' Cup Classic to defend their title on the absolute top of their game. So, 9 furlongs at Fairgrounds, we know is right up Sierra Leone's alley. It's tough to toss them out. Hall of Fame. The other one that I would maybe consider using if he runs is Touch Upon a Star, the Louisiana bred who, was second in this race last year to Red Route 1. And might be better now than he was then. Jake Dalone's still deciding whether or not he's going to run him here in the Star Guitar and take the low-hanging fruit against Louisiana breds on Sunday. But if you watch his last race at Delta, it was basically a public workout. And I think he would give those 2 big ticket items a run for their money if he decides to go.
Yeah, plenty of speed there. I haven't looked yet. Is Sunday kind of a stake bred card?
There's 3 stakes on the card. There's 3 state bred stakes on the card, but it's not like a state bred card through and through. We bring it, we have so much fun on Sunday stuff. We bring a bunch of random people on the air with us, like people. I'm going to bring the paddock judge, Teddy Armstrong, on, people whose names you hear, or, assistant trainers, people with fascinating stories, good personalities, and just kind of, because Kevin and I have no time to handicap the Sunday card. So we basically, mail it in on the handicapping side, bring a bunch of people on, let the people do the handicapping on their own, and just kind of enjoy the day. The Chantal Lannery Memorial is the final race of the meet. It always is. They have a second line after the races, and it's just a celebration of a great season. I
like that. So we'll be tuned in throughout the day at the fairgrounds for some of that entertainment. Before we let you go, we looked at some of the graded stakes. Really nice card on Saturday at the fairgrounds, but there's some undercard stakes as well that are intriguing. The Tom Benson Memorial, 8.5 furlongs on the grass, $150,000. I'm going to take a little pop with Tufani in there. I think Amber Cascade is interesting. Way to be Marie for Rob Atras. Chad Brown has fun with flags. What did you see in the Benson?
Yeah, I like Tufani too. I think she ran better than it looked in the Stall Memorial last out. I like her a little bit, second off the layoff. And then I like the Christophe Clement Eastern Empress, who was second last out and an optional claiming 2 other than off the bench at Gulfstream. Appears to be headed in the right direction. And if this Wild About Hillary does run, then that kind of assures they'll at least be an honest, if not a fast pace up front, which a horse like Eastern Empress is going to need in order to do her best running. So those are the 2 I'm looking at in there. Tufani with you, Seth, and also Eastern Empress from the 11 hole.
Yeah, I looked at Eastern Empress. That's one I may kick myself afterwards that I didn't use, but I took a close look at that one. And finally, the aforementioned Crescent City Derby. This one is for the Louisiana breds, and as the title gives the impression for 3-year-olds, it's 8.5 furlongs on the main track. And in here, I'm going to take a little shot with Classic Time, 8-1, Norm Cassie. Jose Ortiz coming off a nice win in Allowance Company. Sipping on Gin is interesting for Brett Calhoun. Dapper Moon, Cajun Matoli. Nice full field entered in here. Crescent City Derby, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great race. It's showcase of the younger Louisiana breds. Classic Time is who I'm on as well. Again, all the respect.
This is the one you were mentioning before, though, right? The Gary Barber. Yeah, very good.
The one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all respect to Mike, but this horse ain't going to be 8-1. There's a lot of different horses that you can bet in here. You've got Sippin' on Gin, who was a winner of the stake last out. Dapper Moon, who was the favorite in the stake that Sippin' on Gin won. You mentioned some of the others, Cajun Matoli. Hey Jude, when he's at his best, is a nice horse. Wicked as Haggard for Steve Margolis was a dominant winner last out. And acknowledge for Joe Sharp, doing an absolute clunker last out. But earlier in the season, this is the horse we all thought would be the favorite in this race. Classic Time, though, said if you watch that last replay, could not have been any more impressive. Remember what texted with Norm after the race, and he's like, where can I run? What race is coming up? And I told him, I'm like, can this horse go long? And he's like, yeah, no problem. This horse can go long. So Classic Time for me as well. And a really good addition to this race with a lot of different ways you can go.
I like it. Again, we've just taken a look at some of the stakes action. Really nice day. And I meant to mention it earlier, but the New Orleans Classic, the race number 9 on the card, we didn't mention the betting side of things. It kicks off a Bayou Bluegrass Pick 5, New Orleans Classic, Bourbonnette Oaks, Fair Groounds Oaks, Jeff Ruby, and the Louisiana Derby. That's going to be a lot of fun. That'll kick off in race 9, the New Orleans Classic. And that 9th race also kicks off a pick 4, all stakes pick 4, the graded stakes we looked at. So the wagering menu is a lot of fun as well on Saturday. And Joe, this has been fun. Always fun to have the conversation. We'll be rooting for you, Brilliant Racing and Johnny's Fireball on the card. And I always appreciate the conversation. I will wish you and everybody down there good luck. Have a lot of fun this weekend, but over your next couple of weeks as well, which includes a little vacation time, and travel safe back up to Kentucky.
Yeah, and you enjoy your time. We were talking off air about how you were going to go to the Florida Derby. Say hello to we say hello via text and phone call, but say hello in person to my guy, Brian Natto. Very proud of the job he's doing at Gulfstream Park after kind of using the meet here at Fair Groounds as a springboard to that gig and, taking full advantage of it. You enjoy some beach time, and we'll regroup and fire up the cylinders leading up to the Derby.
Sounds good. Joe, appreciate it. Again, travel safe. And yeah, we will talk again sooner rather than later with the Derby on the Kentucky side of things coming up as well. But Joe, appreciate it.
All right. Cheers. Have a great weekend.
Joe Kristufek, again, paddock commentator down at the Fairgrounds and also up at Churchill, obviously. But this weekend with the Louisiana Derby, you can check him out all weekend long.
Want to get your career in horse racing off to a fast start? Well, the University of Arizona's Racetrack Industry Program is your winning ticket. The Racetrack Industry Program has served as a springboard to some of the industry's most successful individuals, with a proven track record of job placement right out of college. If you want to earn a degree in the exciting horse racing industry, the Racetrack Industry Program can put you in the winner's circle.
Sometimes it pays to go with the flow, to check your worries at the door, to reconnect with your crew, to follow the thrills and the flavor, to roll with it and see where it takes you, to enjoy every minute to its fullest, and to dance like there's no tomorrow. You can do that here at Rivers Casino and Resort Schenectady, where the good times flow.
Welcome back. And yes, we've mentioned it a couple of times this morning already, but do want to remind people, and I'll continue to do so throughout the weekend. Don't forget, we are live from Gulfstream next Friday and Saturday. Friday will be on at 8:30. So again, I want you to mark your calendar because obviously Friday's a day we're not usually on anyway, but we'll be on at 8:30 on Friday. Racing Across America Handicappers Report, and then 8 a.m. on Saturday, Florida Derby Day. We'll be live on the Gulfstream set out in the paddock. That's why we have our early starts. We have to kind of wrap things up so that, Ron and Samantha and Brian can get in there. But we appreciate the time they allow us on their set. Their crew down there is a lot of fun to work with as well. So looking forward to heading down, going down with Dan from the control room, and Shannon from the marketing department, and I will be headed down. Should be a fun weekend again. 8:30 on Friday, 8 a.m. on Saturday, coming up from Gulfstream Park. Don't forget, today, Tampa Pick 5 carryover. People love these Pick 5 carryovers. They will send it in. There's $51,000 in the carryover. Late Pick 5 at Tampa starts in race 5. That kicks off about 2:30. And there's a Pick 6 carryover in New York at Aqueduct, $14,000. That's also kicking off in their race 5 at 3:23. Speaking of post times, let me just alert you, Turfway today with the Jeff Ruby highlighting the card. They have an afternoon card that will kick off 12:45 our time at Turfway. Next up will be Gulfstream in the open. Turfway, do not circle around so that you're overlapping the start of golf. Please. We'll keep our fingers crossed. So 12:45 Turfway, 12:50 Gulfstream, 1 o'clock for the Fairgrounds with their big card, and then 1:10 at Aqueduct. That'll kick things off this afternoon. And I'll be in looking at pretty much all of that action. All 4 of those tracks I handicapped for the one sheet. You can always check that out. Brian Edo has his Gulfstream matrix as well on the sheet. Go to capitalotb.com, click on the handicapping drop-down menu, look for handicappers report, and you can find a nice printable one sheet. Most racing days, but today certainly a lot of great action on the one sheet. Just trying to look in what else to mention. Players bankroll today here at the Clubhouse Racebook. Come down, team gets selected. You chip in 25, Capital OTB. I believe we kick in 250 as well. Big chunk of change that the players get. Each player on the team will get a race to play and some money to play with. And at the end of the day, the winnings are split up amongst the team. Always a lot of fun. And often winds up being lucrative as well. So players bankroll today here at the Clubhouse Racebook. Tomorrow, King of the Hill. Come on down and enjoy that as well here at the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. So both of those events happening at the Clubhouse, where you can also watch hoops and horse racing. Second round action coming up. It seemed to universally be mentioned on Twitter late last night. First round, I don't know whether it had the fireworks or excitement of other first rounds, but I root for Arkansas because my sister lives there and nephews and whatnot. I thought the Arkansas game the other night was pretty good, but there were a lot of blowouts. And again, I don't know whether there was a real Cinderella story. I have to look at all the results. I watched a lot of the games, but I didn't maybe catch all. But I don't think there was, one of those Cinderella stories that always makes the tournament kind of exciting in the first weekend. But second weekend, things are lining up. Second round, things are winding up to play out over again today and tomorrow with the games available out in the front part of the race book on our sports screen. So you can watch all the horses and all the basketball action. Grab a little lunch at Black Bear. Have a fun afternoon here at the Clubhouse Racebook this weekend. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks to Joe Kristufek. Again, he was taped yesterday. Today's a busy day for him, but we appreciate his taking the time, as well as our friend Jermey Plonk, Countdown to the Crown, Horse Player Now. Catch Jeremy's thoughts over on his Substack page as well. So keep all of that in mind. But thanks to them for stopping by this morning. Back in tomorrow morning at 10 for Racing Across America with a recap of some of the really nice stakes action from today. But again, we'll be back a little bit later for a look at the afternoon action with OTB Live. Typically, we let the NYRA pregame show play out before I jump in and start OTB Live. So I'm assuming that'll be the game plan again today as well. But we will see you a little bit later on this Saturday afternoon on OTB Live. See you then. We would like to thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park's championship meet runs now through March 30th with high-quality action throughout, including the Florida Derby on Saturday, March 29th.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.